Hello, welcome back to our show, What Do You Think? I'm your host, Afifa Umair, and you are joined by your co host, Rutaba. Today, we will be discussing how South Asian kids feel pressure to do well in their school or pursue a career according to their parents. As we all know, that a lot of South Asian communities often pressurize their children to get high grades and achieve the most they can while they're in their school or to pursue a career in the fields that their parents would want. Typically, it's usually engineers or doctors, and people or students who want to pursue arts are usually looked down upon by their relatives or by their families just because until and unless you become a doctor or an engineer or are in a field that is related to science, they're not usually satisfied by that. And that causes a lot of problems for the students. A lot of times it can also motivate them to do their best, but it does not bring them happiness if they do not want to pursue that career, or if they do not feel like they can do their best. And under that stress, under that pressure, students usually get really stressed out. They don't perform as well, even if their parents want to, just because of the pressure. And even if they're capable of doing that well, they're unable to do so.
Today's guest is Hassan Ahmed from the UK. He's going to start doing business management in September. He lives in the UK but is originally from Pakistan. And my first question for you will be, have you experienced pressure from your parents regarding your education?
Uh, Over the years, definitely, but I feel like even though it can be quite intense at times, it is for the best. Uh, like I was pressured a lot when I was younger for entrance exams going into school, and to be honest, I'd say without it, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have gone to the school where I was in. Uh,
And what makes your
yeah.
school different from other schools?
Uh, Results, probably the education. I don't know. I just thought it was a pretty successful school.
So do you think that's benefited you, like that your parents' pressure has
Yeah,
benefited you in the long run?
yeah, it's definitely benefited me in the end, I guess.
Well, if it did benefit you, in what terms did it actually benefit you? Like, what changes did you see in yourself?
Uh, so so at first, I never really had the motivation to work hard, and really was career driven. So without like my parents giving me that sort of kickstart, I don't think I would have been as say motivated to succeed today as I was at first.
So were you ever told like as a child that you have to become this, or like did you
Yeah.
develop a want to like do a career yourself?
Uh, I wasn't explicitly told that I had to be a doctor or an engineer or anything like that. I think when I was like in lower school, I was tutored by my mum quite a lot, and because she's a doctor herself, naturally she would tutor me in the sciences and maths. Uh, and then because I wouldn't really revise on my own that much, because obviously I was only a child, uh, I kind of avoided all the humanities and other subjects. So I guess like implicitly, I was kind of leaning towards the science subjects.
Hmm.
But yeah, in the end, they were actually the ones who pushed me away from going down medicine.
Oh, why is that?
Uh, okay, so on GCSE results day, it turns out the subjects I did best in were the sciences and maths. Uh, where, Whereas that was never my intention to go down that path. I think
Mhm.
my original three A level options were maths, physics, and computing. Uh, and then I found out that I got an 8 in biology, 7 in chemistry, and I got an 8 in maths. So I was really thinking, well, should I not just go down medicine? And I was talking to my mum about it, and she actually said, Hassan, you don't have a passion for medicine, and it's
Hmm.
very hard. Training in the UK, especially, is quite difficult because, like, they train in Pakistan, where I've heard that. I don't know much about it, but it was slightly easier to become a successful doctor there. So, yeah, they basically pushed me away from it. I won't be doing the degree next year that I'm doing without them doing that. Maybe I'll be going into medicine.
Mm.
You mentioned that, it motivated you, whatever they said, it kind of like motivated you, and that if they didn't motivate you, you wouldn't be where you are and you
Yeah.
wouldn't be pursuing what you are. But a lot of times when parents do that, when they do tell their children to perform well or to choose a certain career, it's not in a motivational style. It's kind of like condescending to the children, right? It kind of like brings them down, and even if they are driven to do something, it a lot of time it just drives them away because it's like, oh, my parents are never going to be happy even with a B because they just expect you to be a plus or a star, whatever. They want you to be that student. So don't you think that a lot of times, even when they're trying to motivate, even though the parents must be doing it with good intention and with the intention of motivating their child, it just results in the opposite?
Uh, yeah, I can agree that it can actually have the opposite effect as intended.
Yeah.
But I feel like at a young age, parents know best. So when parents push you, they're not doing it for their self benefit. They're doing it for you and your future. And I guess that's like the one good thing about my parents. When I was younger, they weren't really as concerned about how I did like socially, how I uh, did in other fields, but they were mainly concerned about my education.
Hmm.
And yeah, at times it was frustrating. I felt honestly so hard done, and yeah, I hated it. Like when I was in year seven, year eight, my parents ideally want me to study like 6 hours a day on weekends, which does seem like too much. But if you can get your if you can get your child in the mindset to work, it does have a long lasting impact, uh, and well, a beneficial impact. So yeah.
So, I know you have like a younger brother. Do your parents treat him the same, or do you motivate him more than your parents, or something like that?
Uh, so my younger brother's in year seven, and yeah, we did treat him the same. He doesn't really get credit. We always just like give him stick for say when he's not working, when he's being lazy, or like say when he is quote unquote working but he's on his phone. We
Hmm.
always do. We give him stick for being unproductive, but deep down, I think our pressuring him to have that motivation to work hard for the future, is getting into his mind, and yeah, he is improving a lot, I guess.
So, as you mentioned that your parents do it with the best intention and everything, have you had your friends or your cousins or anyone around you experience, experience like pressure and from their parents or from their families in terms of that you have to do this, you have to do well, and it had the opposite effect on them. It caused them to become more anxious or more stressed about their studies.
Um, I'm not too sure about my friends or cousins if they've had that sort of effect. Personally, on me, yes, it has at times made me anxious in my studies. I remember breaking down in year six before my entrance exams, which is something like a year six student shouldn't really do. You shouldn't be that devoted to a
Yeah.
set of exams. Uh, and yeah, I would say like that is probably the one negative impact about it. But yeah, I honestly don't know how some of my friends are doing.
Do you ever feel like compared to your friends, or like if someone's doing well in school, do your parents tell you to like be more like him, or like if you have family back home to be like, oh, your cousin's doing this, why can't you be doing this?
All the time, definitely, yeah. And sometimes it doesn't even make any sort of logical sense. They compare, like, my mum was comparing me the other day to a student, one of her family friends did a in who studied IB, and he got his results a few days ago. And my mum was like, "Oh my God, Hassan, he just got into Warwick. Why are you not like him? He did a whole diploma during lockdown because she thought IB was something extra you do. She didn't think it was like a replacement for A levels. So she was getting annoyed at me, just putting me down, uh, when she herself hasn't, well, had no idea what she was talking about. And I feel like all my life I've been growing up, I'd always get compared to a cousin, a family friend, anyone, and say, "Look at him. Why not working as hard as him?"
Mm.
Or "I wish he was my child." Because I
And how
feel
does
like
that, how do you, does that make you feel like, does that
Yeah.
affect you negatively?
I mean, right now I don't really care anymore because I know that's just how our whole culture works. We always like talk well about us, our children to each other on the phones. Well, our parents do. They're always like, oh, I mean, I'm guessing my mum's like, oh, Hassan's going to Newcastle next year to all her friends. Uh,
Mm.
But in front
but
of you, it's not there.
yeah, and also at a young age, it can be very detrimental. It's definitely like something I think should not be there. You shouldn't be comparing someone's someone's skills to another
Yeah.
person's
I think
because
I think a lot of time our parents or our adults keep forgetting that no child can be a whole. The same way we can't expect our parents or them to be like perfect and to do everything. I think that expectation of of the kids just being perfect and scoring A star and everything and achieving the most. I think they keep forgetting that we can't do that. We're human too, right? And and I think they also forget the fact that the other child, whoever they're comparing you to, might be strong in some other field. They might have a good point, right? For example, if they're good in math. But why do you not look at the point that your kid might be great at science or English or history, right? And I think one of the major fault that comes into this or into our community is the fact that it's always that if you're good at math, science, you're the best. So
Yeah.
I think that just pushes the child away, and it also and even if the child is interested into a different career, it makes them push away from that too. How many times have we heard of cases about students leaving even the career that they wanted to pursue just for their parents, and then it ends up as a failure, right? I just feel like parents do forget that. So Hassan, I want to ask you, how many times have you seen students or you have heard about students doing that? Or how many of your friends are there who are pursuing careers that their parents may want them to pursue?
parents don't want them to pursue. Sorry.
Like their parents want them to pursue a career and they're only doing it because of their parents.
Uh, I don't know if any explicitly, but I assume that most people do medicine, like in my like from Pakistan or just the Asian community in general, they would have been pressured in some way by their parents. And yeah, I do agree that it's definitely not fully their decision.
Why do you think they pressure to become like a doctor? Like, is it like
Yeah,
stigma from back home, or like what is it? Why only a doctor and engineer?
Because I think back home and even to like people in our community in general, they seem like the most prestigious jobs. And I mean, as we all know, our parents really do like to show off their children, and
Mm.
they would love to be to say to their relatives like, "Oh my God, look at my son! He's just became a doctor. He's just became an engineer." Uh, so yeah, it gives them that sense of pride, and also in general, like going into medicine and going into well being an engineer isn't a bad career path. And
yeah.
I guess like in the end, parents also just have the children's future in mind. They know that their family will be set.
You
Have you
might
ever like? Oh, God.
you do bring up this point about that, their children future and they're concerned about that. So obviously they aren't just pushing you for their own benefit, but for your benefit too. But is their pushing really the best for those kids? I mean, I personally know people who've been pushed to pursue a certain field and they ended up not even doing well in that. So it's kind of waste of time and it's kind of a waste of their skills because they're in their university pursuing the career, but are they really getting the grades that they need to be in a good field to build a good career? So would you say that that implies in that situation too?
Uh, yeah, I guess I'm not too sure. Sorry.
Right. Have you like ever been told like, oh, if you become a doctor, like if you go into this career, like you'll get good rishta in the future, like, oh, you'll get a good marriage. Like, do your parents ever like talk about like your marriage because of your career?
Yeah, there was like, oh, any future wife you find is always going to deny you if you don't have a good job because the parents care about the job. because, well, in our culture, it's like parents' approval is such a major thing in marriage. Obviously,
Hmm.
because you have to go to their parents before you ask to marry them. So yeah, there was like being a daughter will really win your future wife's parents over, or being a engineer would. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, because you've personally have experienced this comparison, or you have experienced this pressure, and you did talk about the mental breakdown, right? Um, Apart from that, what are some negative impacts that you have experienced, or what are some of the negative impacts that you think that this has on other students? If you could just elaborate on that.
Uh, so probably like you said earlier, it doesn't help with stress and anxiety. Personally, I don't have awful anxiety issues, but I do tend to get anxious quite easily over little things. So yeah, I do think maybe being forced to be anxious about my studies and being forced to like maybe even over care about my studies when I was
Yeah.
younger did kind of impact it. Uh, yeah, so that's a pretty bad feature, I guess.
Do you also think like the uni that you're going to affect like makes an impact? Because like say if you're not going to like as a highly hyped uni, like your parents might not be as happy with you compared to like Oxbridge or something.
Uh, I think your parents know your ability, so they wouldn't force their child to push for Oxbridge if they know that they just wouldn't be able to get there. So when it comes to unis, at least for my parents have been pushing me to go to probably just a standard Russell Group uni because they know that I'm just nowhere near Oxford material. But whereas like with my sister, I think they do have Oxbridge in mind for her because, uh, well, I guess she's a lot more successful and smart than me.
And say if you didn't get into like a Russell Group uni, would you they still be happy with what you're doing?
Uh, I don't know. Obviously, they would be disappointed, as would I, because that's just natural. But I don't think they'd lose faith in me, and they would always support me because I guess that's just what parents do.
I
Hmm.
think
But do you
you
think that's come? God.
continue.
Do you think that's like common with all brown parents? Because like I know some people whose parents wouldn't be happy with their like career path or the uni they're going to and like kind of downplay it or like be embarrassed by what their child is doing.
Uh, I think obviously they might be embarrassed when talking to, say, relatives about it if their relatives' child are going to a better uni. But again, that's just sadly natural in our culture.
I think you brought up a really good point about the fact that your parents have Oxford in mind for your sister, and they just expect you to. They don't expect you to get into Oxford just because they know that okay, you can't do it or you won't be able to
Yeah.
get it. Um, don't you think that this comparison too causes problems between A, the siblings, and B, it also kind of puts you down because you just keep thinking, oh, like, why don't they expect this from me? And I know I can't get into it, but even hearing that isn't like a good point or it's not a great feeling, right?
I mean, I guess it isn't the greatest feeling knowing that you're not going to be the most successful sibling, but I guess like it's just natural. There are always going to be people more successful than you, and you
Yeah.
know what? I'm fully going to support my sister and try and
Mhm.
get her into Oxford or Cambridge if that's what she wants. Personally, I think I'm too old to really get upset about these comparisons to my siblings anymore. But if I was saying year seven,
Yeah.
and my mum was like, Hassan, look, your sister, she's in year 10, we could work to get her into Oxford.
Yeah.
Why are you not working outside? I think that could be detrimental to me. And it would
Mhm.
definitely bring, it would bring me down and just make me think I'm not good enough.
So like as the older sibling, do you feel like you're setting an example for your younger siblings? Because like as it sounds, they're doing better than you.
Uh, I think I set an example in in some ways. Like I have a really good work ethic when I try. So
Mhm.
I always compare Harris to me when I'm when I'm talking to him and encouraging him to study. But in other ways, like when it comes to actual results, that's where I don't necessarily perform the best in. That's where my sister takes the lead.
I also wanted to ask you about the fact that you just said that a lot of times, like, students get really, not students, sorry, parents usually are like, oh, my child isn't into this prestigious university or whatever, right? And you said that it causes them to be like naturally embarrassed. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, but I want to ask you, isn't it that isn't the fact that your child is going to university good enough for the parents? Like, shouldn't it be good enough? Because, for example, like if I'm speaking for US, in US, like I don't know if you've seen, but their high school graduation and everything is so glamorous because a lot of students over there don't even end up going making it to university, right?
Yeah.
And in the South Asian community, you're not even allowed to think about that. You have to be in university. Like that's like a given, I think, right? And I think that's fair because they want you to do the best, they want you to thrive, and that's fair enough. But isn't the fact that your child has made it to university be good enough for parents rather than judging that, oh, my child didn't get into this prestigious university or the number one university in UK or Canada?
Again, that's just like a glass of water being half full or half empty kind of argument. It depends what you want in the child, and it depends like the child's ambitions and what you know the child's capable of. If he's only capable of, if you didn't think he was capable of getting into university, but uh, he's obviously got into university, then yes, obviously you should be proud of it. Uh, but yeah, I think no matter what, though, parents are naturally proud of their children and will always support them. Uh, so yeah, I guess that is my verdict.
Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your opinion and sharing what your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much, Hassan, for being
no
here and
problem.
for sharing your experience and for enlightening our viewers too with some of the things that go into South Asian communities. And I'm sure it's not only the South Asian communities, but I think this topic was important because you usually see, or at least us South Asian kids usually see this occurring in our communities, and it is important that we acknowledge this. It is important that we address this with our parents because we have to talk to them. You have to communicate with them and tell them. It's not like the old times where kids don't go up to their parents and teach them about things. It's time that we start having uncomfortable conversations with our family members. It's time that we start teaching them that irrespective of what field your child chooses, you have to be supportive. Your guidance is important, but I think a parent's support is so much more important to a child. And if you want to guide your child, there are ways to do it. And putting them down and letting it affect their mental health is not the best. Because even if you would want your child to do the best and to pursue the best career, they may not end up doing it just because of the fact that they feel really down and they just feel incapable, even though they might be capable. So the way that we should be doing it is to be positive, is to encourage them, be it us as elder siblings or be it you as parents. Whatever you're doing, you should just always make sure that your child is happy and you are being supportive of that and you're guiding them. So this is it for today, and I hope that you all learned something from our show today. We will be joining you next week again on Friday. Until then, please watch our show on YouTube, Facebook, and the IP boxes in North America. Take care. Bye.